tax expert that we do have is Nancy. So she'll be the one walking us through this presentation. So Act for Alexandria received some grant funding and has been able to participate in a co-op group that brings together organizations to conduct outreach to community members about tax outreach and credits that are available to them. And so the really interesting part about that is that we've been able to fund some child tax credit grants. So ACT partnered with several organizations to fund outreach opportunities to help families get the advanced child tax credits that they are eligible for, because so many families, like you all talked about, just didn't know what tax credits were available to them or didn't know how to navigate the system. So we've learned a lot from those conversations, and some of the barriers that we've had will be discussed in this webinar, and as well as some of the conversations we've heard from the funding network about other organizations that have been doing these outreach projects and the barriers that they've encountered. And so the purpose of this presentation is just going to be to troubleshoot some of those challenges that we've all faced, and to be able to ask questions and receive answers in real time. So I will say that this is being recorded, and so this recording and the slides will be available after this presentation. So I'll have it on our website, but also send it out to all attendees. So without further ado, I would love to introduce Nancy Ryan, who is our resident tax expert, who will be walking us through this presentation today. So Nancy, welcome, and thanks for being here.
Thanks, Molly. Hi, I'm Nancy Ryan. My position is I run a low-income tax clinic at Legal Services of Northern Virginia. I think I see some familiar names and faces here. I think some of you might have seen me speak before. Just to tell you what our organization is, we are not tax preparers, but we are an organization that helps people who have issues with their taxes, like if they're being audited, if they have taxes they cannot pay. Our job is to resolve controversies with the IRS, but also to do outreach and to do education. And this is our hot time of year. Nobody wants to hear about taxes in July. The last year they did because of the child tax credit. But we are very active in the community, both everyone who works at the clinic. There's only 3 employees, but we all work doing volunteer work with the tax services that are available. So we're pretty conversant with it. I started my career at IRS in 1984, so I've been kind of in tax world for a long time. I have a slideshow that I'm going to go through. It is fairly detailed, and I'm not going to go through every detail because that gets tedious and boring, and I only have about half an hour. But I'm overly inclusive because I like you all to be able to keep it as a reference, because there's a lot of good information in there, and you will be able to refer back to it. But what I want to do today is really go over the highlights of what's going on this tax season. Okay, here we go. I'm going to share my screen. And now we should all have EITC Tax Credit Workshop. What's new in 2022? An overview is a nice catchy title. The first thing I want to start out with is I am absolutely thrilled that all of the resources that previously helped low-income people in the community are now back to doing in-person tax preparation. The last 2 years have been really rough because AARP, TaxAid, and virtually every VITA site completely shut down in the middle of March. And last year they had very limited services available. And I have been sending clients to these organizations for years because these are the safe places to go to get your taxes done. All of these programs, the VITA program and TaxAid, are IRS sponsored and IRS certified and IRS funded, and they have very strict rules and really tough training. I got an 80 the first time I did the certification exam this year, which is really embarrassing for me. But they really want to make sure we know, there's a lot going on, and it was pretty tricky. But I have always referred people to VITA and to AARP TaxAid. The cutoff, the income cutoff for VITA this year is $74,000. And that's why I use AARP as a backup, because most people do not realize that anyone can go to AARP TaxAid. You do not have to be a member. You do not have to be poor. You do not have to be old. If you show up, you can make an appointment, you can go, and they will do taxes for anyone. Their primary mission is to do it for people who are over 50, but like I said, anybody can go in and get their taxes done. Molly also asked me to highlight this organization that really saved the day in the last 2 years, called getyourrefund.org, because they figured out a way to provide tax preparation remotely when all these other services were not available. And they are still alive and well, and they are available year round, which is such a godsend for us, because most of these other sites completely shut down. The IRS also has a free file program where people can use the tax software online for free. I actually do trainings on teaching people how to do that. I'm doing one tonight for a bunch of women's veterans. And for people with simple tax returns, that's okay. But most people that come to legal services, I like to steer them to these organizations. But these are all the links where they can get signed up and find the closest one. They're doing it a little differently. These used to be organized places where you can just show up and they'll do your taxes, but because of COVID, they have different protocols. So everybody has to fill out the forms in advance. And that's an area where nonprofits are being very helpful during this tax season, because it's a fairly daunting bunch of paperwork. And a lot of people who are not familiar with the tax system and maybe who do not speak English, like will look at these forms and be like, oh my God. But I know there are organizations throughout the county, or in Fairfax County and Alexandria and you people who are available to help people just fill out these basic forms. And that's a huge step to get them to get their taxes done. Okay, this is the local VITA site in Alexandria. There are always language issues. This is this site I think has more languages available than any other site in Northern Virginia, because I was looking at the whole list yesterday, and all of these languages are available, which is wonderful. And again, everybody in Alexandria, this is the site. If people want to work remotely, they can still do that. There's also, this is one of my favorite VITA sites. They had an LITC before I even existed in the LITC world. And there are wonderful, wonderful people who help, who are really geared towards, this organization is geared towards helping immigrants adapt to the United States, but they have their own VITA program and excellent tax preparers, and they too will take anybody. And I know the tax preparer there, and he is the most diligent, fabulous, dedicated person. And I like to say, you know, I don't want to overload him, but this is another resource if Alexandria is not available. They are also available year round. So that's a help. Okay, so, but what we want to do, the reason I start out with that is because we want people's tax returns to be secure and safe. And the worst cases I see are the fly-by-night tax return preparers. People come in to me with these horrific mistakes on their tax returns that have gotten them in trouble. And if your tax return is wrong, even if your preparer did the bad thing and you had no clue what was going on, the IRS still holds you responsible. So the things to avoid when people are looking for a tax preparer is you never want to go to the person who promises, I'll get you a bigger refund than anybody else, because the chances are they're making stuff up on the tax return in order to do this. And then there are just weird little red flags that the IRS knows what people do to do this. And those are red flags. And I see a lot of audits. 2017 and 18, the big issue was fraudulent earned income tax credit issues. And I'm still working my way through that audit cycle for these people. What they would identify is people who would have a Schedule C that would show cash income that was exactly the right amount of the maximum income that where they would max out the earned income tax credit. And all these people are now having to prove their cash income. Okay. Any preparer who says they're going to give you a percentage of a refund instead of the flat fee, that's trouble, because they have a personal incentive to make the refund bigger, even at your expense. So that's it. People need to ask if the preparer has a PTIN number, which is a tax ID number assigned by the IRS, because if they don't, they're going to do what's called a ghost return. Well, it'll look like the taxpayer did it themselves, and they have no accountability for it. Their names aren't on it. They have no, there's no way that they can be connected with the return. And they're doing this on purpose because they're getting paid, and then they basically disappear. So it's always good to ask the person if they have an ID number to do this. If you get a copy of the return and it says self-prepared, well, it wasn't self-prepared. So you should, flags should go up and say, wait a minute, your name's supposed to be on here, because if you pay someone to do a tax return, they are supposed to be identified on that return. There are a lot of fraud with, if your refund is going to go to the tax preparer's account instead of to the taxpayers, that's very dangerous. A lot of times they'll say, well, we're going to get the return, given to us, and we're going to take our fee out of it, and then we'll give you the balance. A lot of times the people they never see their tax return. They'll never see the refund. It disappears. The people disappear. They close up shop April 15th and they're gone. I've had people who never saw the tax return before it was filed. And what a good repairer will do is explain the tax return to someone to get a signature. And if they don't have you sign it and they don't show it to you, that's a big red flag. And also, if you don't get an actual copy of the tax return at the end, if you, I've had this, and this is particularly common of people who were not born here, who really don't know what's going on with the tax system. They hand someone their W-2 and it's taken care of, but that's it. They think it's done, and they don't even realize that they should be getting copies of everything like that until they get a very nasty letter from the IRS saying that they're in trouble. My big thing that was basically go to the legitimate IRS sponsored programs that I've highlighted on the first screen. Okay. I know this is supposed to be the EITC focus, which normally is the focus during Tax World. But this particular year, the big issue has been the child tax credit and the advanced child tax credit. That has gotten far more press. It is actually worth more money than the earned income tax credit this year. And it has caused the biggest hullabaloo in Tax World. But it's also available to far more of your clients than the earned income tax credit. Okay. And I was actually at ARP doing a return yesterday, and I had a woman who does married filing separate, which is the worst tax filing status there is, but her husband has a business that has tax trouble, so she never files with him. And I was absolutely stunned, because usually when you do married filing separate, you're not supposed to get any of these benefits. You can't get the earned income tax credit. You can't get education credits. You can't get anything. It's a very discouraging status. And I did her return, and she has an 11-year-old daughter, and she is getting this credit. And I did it 3 times to make sure I didn't make a mistake. And then I talked to another experienced person, and we were both like, wow, this is incredible. We cannot believe that this tax credit is available, has been so expanded that people who we would never have dreamed could get it are getting it this year. Okay. So this is the big answer to the people when you said people don't understand why they should want to file a tax return. Well, for 2021, this is the reason why just about anybody who has a child born in the United States needs to file a tax return. There's always been a child tax credit, not always, for a long time we've had a child tax credit. When my kids were young, it was $1,000 a year. In 2018, it was doubled to $2,000 a year. But this past year, part of the American Rescue Plan that was passed in March, more than doubled the child tax. No, it didn't double it. It went to $3,000 and $3,600 if the child is under 6. Okay, so that's a huge credit. But it also required these advance payments to start being made in July. And that's all I heard about for the last 6 months of the year is somebody's getting my payments. I'm not getting my payments. How do I get my payments? And that has been, and that's been a huge focus of the IRS. The reason they passed this is because those stimulus payments from 2020 reduced child poverty by 40%. Actually, I've now seen, they say some estimate it's been 45%. So this is what a congressional goal to just reduce child poverty in general as quickly as possible. And that's why they started the monthly payments in July. Get My Refund, the people who do that, they actually started another initiative called Get My Payment, which was designed to help people get signed up for those payments, even people who don't normally file tax returns. And they did a lot of good work during the year. At this point, I'm admitting somebody new. At this point, there are no monthly payments being issued because even though it was anticipated that these monthly payments would become permanent and would be enacted into, become a permanent part of the tax code, at least for the time being, they were part of the Build Back Better legislation that has not yet passed. and that is now apparently going to be considered piecemeal. So there are no payments right now. I believe that the credit for 2022 is back to the $2,000, but I am guardedly optimistic that this will be a high priority, so that when they start working on various parts of the Build Back Better, they will reinstitute these monthly payments for all taxpayers, because they were very popular and they were very beneficial, and they were not that expensive, quite frankly, for the government to pay these. Okay. They expanded the dependent definition for the child tax credit for 2021. So it used to be you had to, if you were 17 or older, you were not eligible for it, but they did increase it a year. You still have to have a legal child, or the child can't be supporting themselves. They have to live with you for at least half the year, and the child has to be a US citizen with a social security number. Okay, just the child, because that goes into the other big change, which you only have to be a US resident for more than 6 months of 2021 to be eligible for this, even if you do not have a social security number, even if you are not here legally. And this is the first benefit that tax benefit that has ever been extended to people who are not here legally. And this is like for the populations that we all deal with who are afraid of the government, this is a huge reason to encourage them to go and file a tax return, because this is money in their pocket. Okay, I already told you about the 2,000. It's 3,600 this year, or 3,000 if the child's older. This is now a refundable credit, which means some credits only reduce the amount of tax that you owe down to zero. And then if you don't owe tax, that's it. You just don't have to pay the tax. They have made this refundable. So that means you get a refund of any amount in excess of the tax that you owe. So if you're extremely low income and don't owe any tax, this is literally, you get a benefit, a check for $3,000 or a check for $3,600. So this is a big focus group, and a big, target group for all of us is people who don't work, don't generally file taxes, and they think that they do not have to, and legally they don't have to, but this year they absolutely want to, because if they have a child, they can get money in their pocket. They are not filing to pay tax. This is how they're going to get this money. So non-working people need to be encouraged to file a tax return. You have your single mothers or whatever who are just subsisting on public benefits. This is like a bonus public benefit, and it cannot be used to reduce the other public benefits that they're getting. So this will never be counted against them that they're getting this extra money. It can't reduce their SNAP. It can't reduce, get them kicked off Medicaid or anything like that. This is just something on top of what they're already getting. So you want to encourage them to go ahead and file. Other categories of people who don't normally file a tax return would be people who get SSI or veterans disability. And many of those people have children, but they don't, they're used to their, whatever they're getting being just kind of rolled into whatever benefit whatever check they're getting. They can also, on top of that, file a tax return to claim this child tax credit. Going back, the monthly installments were designed to be paid. The goal was to pay 50% of the total tax credit before the end of 2021. In an ideal world, people would have gotten 6 payments. A lot of this did not work. And I've got to say, they set up this, this portal on the IRS website that didn't really ever get off the ground for new filings. All right. So for people who hadn't claimed their kids in the past, or people who hadn't filed a tax return, it was really spotty whether or not it worked. The people who actually got these payments in real life last year were people who had claimed their kids on the 2020 return. Okay, so if you had a dependent on 2020, the IRS already had that information in their system and they spit out these checks. But if you didn't fall into that category, it was really hit or miss whether or not you were going to be able to get signed up to get this money. And particularly if someone else claimed that child in 2020, even if you were the person who had the child in 2021, the IRS never got the portal for you to be able to switch so that you're the person getting the payment. They just never worked that out. They didn't really have a lot of time, and they had a lot of stuff going on. The thing is, the person who actually had the child for 2021 is the person entitled to the full credit. And what they need to do to get the full credit, the full $3,000 or $3,600, is file a tax return. And that's all they need to do. And that is a far simpler process for the taxpayers and for the IRS to just have a tax return filed, because their computers are ready to process all these payments now. So that, this is a big window of opportunity until April 17th for people to just very simply get a tax return filed, and they're going to get the full credit. And I've been reassuring people since July, well, I know you want your monthly payment, but don't worry, it won't count against you that you didn't get it now, because when you file your tax return, you're going to get the full thing. So the biggest message on the child tax credit to everyone is it's not too late to get the whole thing. You didn't miss anything. You're just getting it. You have to wait a little longer, but you absolutely are getting the full thing. But the thing you need to do is file that 2021 tax return. That is the only way to get it, at this point, is to file the 2021 tax return. Whatever authority there was to do monthly payments has expired, so we don't want to do that, but you want to file and get that full credit as a lump sum. As long as the child was the person's dependent for 2021, they get the credit, even if someone else already got those 6 payments because they claimed the child in 2020. And that's perfectly fine. I did not give you all the information on who might have to pay it back and the income limits and all that, because we're focusing on our clients who were the ones who had the kids living there. It's possible the other parent would end up paying something back. That is not our problem, so we're not going to talk about it. But just in case you're wondering, this is just, if they're over a certain income, they will be required to pay it back. The IRS has had a horrible, horrible time during the pandemic because they've had a lot on their plate. They've had to issue the 3 stimulus payments and set up this new program. And they were shut down basically for 3 months, just like everybody else. I'm sure you hear on the news about not being able to process the paper returns. They are still working on 2019 and 2020 paper returns. So we don't want people mailing stuff to the IRS. This is the hot time of year where we have all these resources available, more than we usually do, so that people can get their returns filed electronically, and they want to get some sort of a direct deposit, some sort of electronic deposit to get that tax refund. If they don't have a bank account, because we have a lot of unbanked, most people have some sort of an EBT card that they're getting their benefits on. And you can use that, though using SNAP cards is not really the best idea. But there are places where they can go, where unbanked people can go and get an EBT card. And there's another slide, I believe in this one, if not, I'll send it to you after, where they can apply to get a card that can be used solely for the purpose of getting their tax refund. But you don't want to check. Checks are stolen, checks are lost. It's some older people usually want the check. No, please make sure that everybody understands, if you want to get this money in any reasonable period of time, file electronically and figure out a way to get a bank account that you can do it. The only person who has to have a valid Social Security number is the child. Parents who have who are undocumented can get it, but they do have to have an ITIN, just because they need to have some sort of tax ID number that can be associated with the return. And we'll go into that a little more. The big question with the shared custody, that comes up all the time. IRS has simplified, they've had so many complicated rules. The general rule is the person who has custody of the child or with whom the child lives more than 50% of the child's time is the person entitled to claim the child. This is regardless. It doesn't matter if the other parent makes more income. It doesn't matter if the other person is paying child support. As a matter of fact, the IRS views the child support money as money that the recipient, it's the recipient's money that's going towards supporting the child, not the payer's money. So that's it. So I already went through the prior year return. The 2021 payments were part of 2021. And the whole thing, if you did get payments, there is a reconciliation that has to be done on the 2021 tax return. But that's usually somebody who's already in the system. If the parent got the advance payments, I've already told you all this, they're going to have to probably pay it back, not our problem. But if someone else got it, and this is, because this is the thing I hear all the time is somebody else got my payments. And I'm like, that's okay. You've got the custody order, you're good, file the return, you're going to get the full thing. And in the olden days, and usually when there's a conflict over who's over, if the same child gets claimed on 2 returns, it takes months to sort this out. But as long as the parent with custody files first, there will not be a delay in getting this refund. They will get it processed electronically. But it is important that they move, you know, if they think they have someone else who's going to try to claim the kid, they want to get the return filed as quickly as possible. My mouse is acting up. Okay. Okay, now on to earned income tax credit. This was also really expanded this year, so that the income cutoff went up very much higher. So now the cutoff for a single person is 21,430, and for a married filing joint couple, 27,380. They expanded it so that former foster children can get it, and homeless youth, and they lowered eligibility to 18, so that this way someone who has just left the foster system will immediately be eligible to get the earned income tax credit. And there used to be required that they be enrolled in school to get it. That is no longer true. They also expanded it to senior citizens. People over 65 used to not be able to get the EITC, and now there is absolutely no age limit. The only thing is that everyone on the tax return has to have a social security number. So someone who is undocumented cannot get the earned income tax credit. But there are categories of people who might be told, and this is almost the category here that I'm most focused on, people who still work part-time jobs but don't earn enough to require them to file a tax return, and they're already getting their social security, are frequently told by tax preparers that they don't have to file. And that's not really true, because if they have any earned income at all, they could be eligible for this, for the earned income tax credit. So they should be encouraged to file anyway. And this rule that was new last year for people who unemployment doesn't count as earned income. So people who have had spotty employment during 2021 and didn't earn as much as they normally would can still use their full-time income from 2019 as the basis, as their earned income for the 2021 tax return. So that increases the amount of the refund that a lot of these people can get. Other things. This is the maximum has gone up. For no children, you can get up to 1502. One child, 3618. Two children, 5980. And if you have 3 or more qualifying children, the maximum is 6728, which I think somebody told me it had gone up 30%, which is a pretty big jump for the federal government. People who want to see if they're eligible for it, there is a tool on the IRS website right here where you can plug in your numbers and they'll tell you what you're going to get. Other things to know about this year, there are still people out there who did not get all of their stimulus payments. A reason that someone who normally wouldn't file would want to file is if they did not get the third payment. Which was the $1,400 payment. And to do that, they need to file a 2021 tax return. But there are also people out there who never got the first and second payments. And it is a broad misconception that they've lost their opportunity. The IRS does not advertise that, yes, we have a filing deadline of April 15th every year, or give or take a few days. But if you're due a refund, you've got 3 years to claim that refund until 3 years from that filing date, which means if you find out that clients never got any stimulus payments, they can now file both 2020 and 2021 and get all the payments. And VITA, Get My Refund, AARP, they will all do 20 and 21 for your clients. Because the lack of help last year is one of the reasons why a lot of people didn't get those first 2 payments, because they needed to file a tax return and they were just overwhelmed and never did it. But they have not lost their chance, and they should go. And that's a lot of money in people's pockets, especially if they have children. That this is all gets added on. So people who don't have, this is not income dependent at all. People could have a lot of money sitting on the table that all they need to do is file a tax return to go get it. Okay, so this was the third round, was 1,400. One of the things they did for the third round, which was wonderful, is they expanded the category of dependent, because beforehand it had to be a child dependent, age 16 or other. But if you have this category of additional dependent, like college age kids, if you're supporting, your parent living in your house or whatever, basically anyone that you're paying the support for makes you eligible for this $1,400. I was at AARP last night and a client came in with her very elderly mother-in-law who had not filed, who got, because she was on Social Security, she got her $1,400 last year, but this year they are claiming her as a dependent because they are in fact supporting her. So the family was, my client was the daughter, she got another $1,400 for the mother-in-law. So she had never gotten her third payment, but she ended up getting her $2,800 and $2,800 for the mother, even though the mother got her $1,400 last year. And again, that's the sort of thing that when, you know, if you go to one of these places that has had IRS training, you'll realize that that's something that can happen. So there, you know, this year I'm seeing far more people with very large refunds than people who end up owing taxes because of these things. Okay, the IRS, I just want to say something about these letters. The IRS made a big thing in January about how they were going to send out letters to tell everybody what their prior tax payments were for the stimulus and the child tax credit. So many letters were wrong that they have stopped doing that. The important thing is for people who are going to be filing taxes, they have to match. All right, if they don't match what the IRS has on their records, their return gets sent into math error category. And it will take a very long time, but you can help people go onto the IRS website and set up an account that will, you know, just like you would a credit card account, and have them check what they actually got or what's in the IRS record. And that's the number that goes on the return, because if, you know, and even if it's wrong, you're still better off putting that in because you want it to go through the computer, and then the return can be amended later on to claim the rest of the money. The IRS also, most of them are child related. There is a child and dependent care credit, which is not just a credit for having a child, it is for paying for child care. It used to be a 35% credit of what you paid. Now it's 50%. And this is the one that actually doubled. Okay, this has now become refundable, which means once your taxes are paid, if there's credit left over, you get it in your pocket. If you have 2 children, you don't have to allocate it so that if it's $4,000 per child, it has to be $4,000, $4,000. You can have it be $6,000, $2,000 and still get the full credit. Most children have to be under the age of 13 for this. You can't use it for kindergarten or overnight camp. I highlighted that because when my daughter was young, I used it for overnight camp. So don't do that. And you can't claim it if you're paying somebody who's living in your household. Okay. The amount has been raised to $4,000 per child. The limit was $2,000 before. So the total, if you have 2 children, you could be getting back a credit of $8,000 for if you pay $16,000 in childcare. And I know in this area, a lot of people do. A lot of women I work with, even though they're working for legal services, they are paying that much in childcare. So this is a huge credit for people. People should be aware the emergency assistance, any type of emergency assistance that was funded by the federal government is not taxable income. Okay. And again, the main thing is because I know you people deal with helping them get the benefits, things like rent, the rent assistance, that does not count against them at all. And nothing should be reduced because they got those benefits. Okay. Let me see. Charity this year, these are just throwing it at the end. Charity, last year, if you are not itemizing, you were allowed to deduct $300 in cash contributions. That was for anybody who did it, but it was only per return. So if you were married, it didn't matter. It was still $300. They did double it this year to $600. This is the standard. This is with the standard deduction. You don't have to have any other write-offs. And again, this is something that's special for 2021. We'll see if they do it again for 2022, but that's going to be a year-by-year thing. This is another big money maker. People who were self-employed during the pandemic who had to take sick leave because they were either sick or they had to stay home and take care of their kids because the schools were closed. They're entitled to get, basically they're getting sick leave from the government based upon their 2019 income. And this is a huge amount of money for a lot of self-employed people. It is a very complicated computation. If you know someone who's self-employed who had a COVID situation, and I'm sure you know a lot of them, tell them to go to VITA or Get My Refund or AARP and get a tax return done, because they will be paid sick leave by the government to do this. But there's do not try that at home. It's very complicated, but everybody who's been trained in one of the IRS programs has been trained to do this. And you wanted to get it right, and it's worth a lot of money. I'm not going to go into the details, like I said, because it's just, we don't want to do any math today. We only have 30 minutes. But I basically summarize what's in this slide. Like I said, this is more of a reference. People have to remember, if they took money out of their 401k and decided to spread out the tax or pay it back over 3 years, they have to remember they did that and do that. People who are self-employed who deferred paying their employer tax last year have to remember to do that. And again, the people at AARP and VITA will remind them. Tax troubleshooting, the biggest problem that I see when I am dealing with people is that especially the undocumented people are terrified that they're going to get reported to the immigration people if they file a tax return. And nothing could be further from the truth. The IRS does not want to do another agency's job. They have enough on their plate, and there are anti-disclosure laws that prevent the IRS from reporting anyone or sharing any information. This is why they have never turned over Trump's tax returns, because it is illegal for them to do it. And they've got to, that's why it's against the law to disclose someone's tax information. And that is true from top to bottom. They cannot tell you the president's, and they cannot tell an undocumented person's information to anyone else, and they're not going to do it. So please, if people are afraid of the IRS and afraid of immigration, that is not an issue. Cash people, that is a big problem on two ends. People who pay people in cash tend to not be doing things the way the IRS wants them to do it. And a common problem I see for people who are new to the United States is they are paid in cash and they are not given the tax filing forms, but the employer sends the forms to the IRS reporting the income. So the IRS is going to hold the person responsible. So if people are being paid in cash, they really should be getting a 1099. It's a very unpleasant surprise when they go to finally try to become citizens and they pull IRS records and find out that they haven't filed returns on 10 years of income. Okay, I already talked about that misconception. You have 3 years to file to get a refund. Okay, and that's it. If you missed last year's filing deadline, that's okay. You do have to have a tax ID to file any sort of tax return at all. There is a mailing address in all the literature, which I cannot emphasize enough. You do not want to mail in an IT application. Okay, that is the worst thing you can do. The IRS does have certified acceptance agents all over the country. So someone who needs to apply for an ITIN can go to VITA or Get My Refund or AARP, get their return done, get help filling out the W-7, and then go to the certified acceptance agent to get their ITIN. And the reason they want to do that is because the IRS requires original documents, your original passport, and that's the big one, is you have to send in your original passport or whatever documents you're doing. And the last thing you want to do is get those original documents put on the IRS unopened mail file. Okay, so if you're steering people to get an ITIN, here is the link where you can help them find where they go. They could just take the paperwork there and it will be done on the spot. And it's a lot of really respectable places like Deloitte. Okay, I know I'm over time. Things that your organizations can do to help is to get them ready by getting their documents together, make copies of the social security cards and photo IDs for all the people on the tax return, like all the kids' social security numbers. You can assist by these VITA and AARP, and I'm sure Get My Refund has their own set of forms. These are the ones that are really active right now. They have online forms that have to be filled out in advance, particularly if there's a language issue and it's something that you can help with interpretation. That would be very, very much appreciated, because it's daunting, and it's important that they have it filled out when they get there. IRS forms are available in English and Spanish, so you can help people who, you can either get them the Spanish forms, because usually these organizations are only handing them out in English. And you can also help and actually call up and make the appointments for them, because a lot of people not speaking English are kind of afraid to do that. Okay, I'm only 4 minutes over. Any questions for me? I know Molly has other stuff she wants to go through with you. So does anybody have any questions? You can put them in the chat. You can take yourself off mute and ask or anything like that.
Nancy, we do have one question about, can you clarify a little bit if tax ID is for ITIN, and is this for people who don't have social security number?
Yes, and ITIN is used only for people who don't have a social security number. Obviously, the ideal is to have a social security number, but if you have one, you cannot get an ITIN. But it is very specifically for anybody who cannot get who can't get a social security number. And that's why, you have to have an ITIN to deal with the IRS. A lot of people in the past have just not bothered. They prefer to just be part of the cash economy, but there is a huge incentive this year for many people to go ahead and get that ITIN because they can get that child tax credit. And if the children were born here, that is a lot of money. I mean, you have 3 kids, that's $9,000. I mean, it is little, it's $9,000 of credit for these people. That is a huge amount of money. And it's worth going through the paperwork. And like I said, it's not as hard as it sounds, because you really can just get the return done. It's a very simple form. It's a 1-page form to fill out for the ITIN. And it does come in English and Spanish. But the worst, the hard part is getting the documents together. But I actually have a separate PowerPoint on how to get an ITIN. That's about half an hour that I can send to Molly if she wants to distribute it. And you can just have it as a reference. But the most important thing is knowing that there are these certified agents out there where you can go in person, you make an appointment with them, go in, and they will give it to you so that you do not have to not have your passport. I did an in-person presentation on Saturday down in South County, and some poor guy had sent in his stuff in September, and he just doesn't have any of his IDs, his original documents. He doesn't have them. They're sitting somewhere in the IRS. So.
And Nancy, would you mind not sharing your screen, and then that way we can see if anyone's raising their hands. Okay. We have another question here that says, for 65 and older working individuals, does this Social Security income count as earned income, or is it just the current salary?
Social Security does not count as earned income. But if it's a recent retiree in the last couple of years, they can use what they earned in 2019. So this year, and like I said, we don't know if they're going to let the earned income tax credit go beyond 2020, being used in 2022. But for right now, if you're recently retired, and even if you're not working, you can use your 2019 earned income to claim the earned income tax credit. So, that's a huge bonus for senior citizens.
Great. There's another question that says, how can we refer people to you? I guess that's asking about your availability. Is there any best way to contact you?
That is the last PowerPoint slide, which let me just show you. You could do a screenshot of it because here we go.
And we'll share this information as well in a follow-up email.
Okay, there it is. These are our direct contact. I would prefer, please don't give this information to clients. They need to go through the general intake, but we provide this to you guys because you are our colleagues and friends. So you can contact any of us directly with a question. Okay, this is Jessica, is our director. I am the qualified tax expert, and Rainier is the person who handles all the Spanish speaking people, which is he's terrific. I did have a brainstorm when I went down to, I don't know if you know the neighborhood community group down in South County. They're doing similar work to what you're doing. And we did an in-person presentation there. And instead of having him translate everything I said slide by slide, when I got there, I just said, would you just do the presentation? It's like, and he did, and he was a hit. Let me tell you, people really appreciated having somebody just do the presentation in Spanish. So it worked out famously, but that's it. So, but if people have tax issues, now this is not for us to do their tax returns, that's slide 1, but this is people who get any letter from the IRS that they need help with that they don't understand. You just send them right to us. And we can, and sometimes we just have to tell them what to do and how to do it. But I mean, you know, we have a callback list. Every person who gets referred gets a callback. And our eligibility is, you know, legal services has income cutoffs, but the low income tax clinics can give a consultation to anyone, regardless of income. We can't represent someone that's over a certain income level, but we can give them advice because they just, you know, the IRS does give us funding and they just want us to give correct information. They want people to have the right answer. So it doesn't, anyone at all can call in and get a half-hour phone call for free.
There was another question that says, what's the typical cost of using agents for the ITIN paperwork?
You know, that I do not know. I don't know. I just, you know, the thing is I don't generally, we're not allowed to represent undocumented people before the IRS because we have legal services funding. There is another organization in Richmond, the Community Tax Law Project, that does not get LSC funding, so they don't have that restriction. So whenever we've had people, undocumented people with issues, I send them down to Richmond. And they're wonderful, and they take all the every single referral I send them. They are delightful, wonderful people. So, but that's it. But I don't know how much it costs for that service.
There was another question that says, can you explain what you mean by credit? Does that mean money in people's pockets?
Yes, a credit is, it's a subtraction. It's a dollar for dollar subtraction normally from how much tax you owe. So that if you, let's just say the credit's $3,000 and you owe 20, you owe $2,500, that reduces the tax down to zero. And in prior years, that would be the end of it. You just don't have to pay tax. But this year, if you've got that one child, they're going to send you that extra $500 on the tax return. So when we are dealing with our low income people who, you know, there is a standard deduction, people who you have to earn at least, a single person has to earn at least $13,000 to have to owe taxes. And if it's a single parent, they're filing head of household. So they have to earn almost $19,000 before they have to owe any taxes. And we all know that most of us we don't see many people in our line of work that go in higher than that, which means that full $3,000 for a mother who, you know, a single mom who's making $16,000 a year, she is going to get $3,000 in her pocket per child. And that is a huge amount of money. So, and that's at 2 kids, my God, $6,000. I mean, doing taxes this year is delightful for me because I only have good news for people. There, you know, it's wonderful. It really is. People cannot believe that this is, you know, like they're getting all this money. It's not a little, you know, it's not a $600 refund. You know, even people who are used to getting the earned income tax credit are flabbergasted because they're getting the child tax credit too. So we are seeing tax refunds, $11,000, $12,000. I've never seen refunds like that before. I mean, it's like, and it's because of that child tax credit, because we, you know, I've seen them for $7,000, $8,000 for big families because of the earned income tax credit. But now you add on that extra child tax credit, and it's unbelievable how much money is being sent out. And, you know, I'm not allowed to get into politics, but I will say it's like, it's what the government is spending on this program is a pittance compared to most government programs, you know, and it is really stopping child poverty and to such a large extent. And I am delighted by it. I am assuming most of you are too. I mean, this is something really, really good that has happened. And, you know, despite the pandemic and all the hardship and all that, this is really a very bright light for so many of our clients. So, but you got, and all they have to do, the big message is go get your money. All you have to do is file a tax return. You know, this is so much easier than last year when we had to try to get them to understand how to go get that child tax credit and go into a portal and go do this and go to, just go file a tax return. And here, these people will do it for you.
Well, thank you so much, Nancy, and thank you for your expertise and leaving us off on a positive note. And we have one more portion of the presentation that we just want to talk about mini grants just for a moment before we conclude. And so I'm going to turn it over to Brandy to go ahead and
Great.
talk about the text once I figure out how to share my screen.
Thanks, Molly. And thank you, Nancy, again. That was awesome. I feel like I learned so much. And I'm so encouraged and excited for our nonprofits to be sharing this information with the families and individuals that they're working with, because I think you're so right. This is going to make a huge difference for our families in Alexandria. So with that said, I am excited to share that ACTA will be launching a mini grant program to support this tax prep, EITC, and CTC awareness. So similar to the mini grants that we've done in the past, we've done that for the 2020 census, the COVID-19 vaccine education and awareness building, and then also the ARPA funding advocacy and engagement. We know that you are all trusted messengers in your community, and you have those relationships with your constituents to share this information and to help alleviate some of the fears that they might be feeling around taxes, or even just helping educate them about what is available to them. So we will have grants available up to $3,000 to support your efforts in outreach and support to help your constituents file. So as Nancy said, just file. So the different things that you can get grant funding for, you'll see a list here, but I'll just touch on a few. Outreach and awareness. So this process, I mean, I think we all learned a lot just even being in this workshop, is helping to explain the process. What are the options that they have for tax filing? What can they expect? I think also what Nancy's slide about all of the things that the beware of, I think that was really helpful too. And as a reminder, you're going to get a copy of these slides in the recording. Navigating the tax filing process. So a big piece that is a barrier is not having the documentation that people need in order to file their taxes. So thinking about ways that you can assist with acquiring the necessary documents. We talked a little bit about the ITIN and helping them get that tax ID number. A lot of times you have to upload photos of documents. People need to help getting appointments or realizing where they can go to get their taxes filed. So helping them find where those free tax prep sites are, helping them schedule an appointment, that type of thing. We also heard about the importance of filing electronically for safety, but also for speed. So making sure that you could provide Wi-Fi or technology access for people who are going to be filing their taxes on their own, because there are simplified forms that you can use and simplified things, resources online that people can use to walk through those. You can host pop-up events. So maybe it's an educational event. Maybe you want to invite Nancy and her team to come in and talk about some of these things with your staff or whatever it is. So we have funding available for you to do that. We also want to make sure the accessibility in multiple languages is really important. So maybe it's helping to pay for interpreters or translation services to make sure that people understand the benefits that are available to them. Another big piece, and Nancy touched a little bit on this, is just the testimonials and the stories that are coming out from people who have gotten the child tax credit or who have benefited from the earned income tax credit, whether they're video, audio, or written stories. These are things that we are really interested in helping to promote as well. And then we also know that there might be other ideas that you have that are really applicable to the audience that you work with. What's good for your organization and with your constituents. So again, we are so excited about these expansions of the federal earned income tax credit and the child tax credit. And we know that they are going to dramatically improve financial stabilities for our families who are low income. But we need to make sure that they know about them. So, and know how to enroll and how to get their taxes done in a free and non-predatory setting. So again, this is just a chance for you to help your clients, and we want to provide you with the support to do that. So if you have questions, don't hesitate to reach out. Molly's contact information is on the slide. We have like a minute left, so if there's any other questions that people might have, we can take those too. But again, we are always here to help